On today's episode of the Football Fellowship podcast, we're going to be breaking down not just the game of the season, but the game of the decade, an absolutely mental clash between Chelsea and City, which saw the league leaders drop a couple points this weekend. And it was Arsenal and Liverpool who made up that ground with 3 points apiece and 3 goals apiece as well. And unfortunately, Spurs have returned to being Spurs, bottling their game against Wolves in the last 10 minutes. And hopefully there won't be any bottling at our halftime football tenable quiz for myself and Mev either.
Welcome back to the Football Fellowship podcast. That was Toby with intro and myself, Mevin. We're glad to have you with us. And like Toby said, we have a whole host of Premier League fixtures to talk about this week. A whole lot of goals, more VAR, a couple of red cards as well. And obviously the game to start off with, Chelsea for Manchester City for, like Toby said in the intro, arguably game of the decade, definitely game of the game week. And where to start? I don't think we really expected that from Chelsea to put up as much of a fight, and maybe we're the better team on the day. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think going into the game, I think if Chelsea didn't have that game against Spurs last week where they did win 4-1, I think we wouldn't have given them any chance at all. I think since then, a few people may have thought, they could give them a game. They could maybe get a point if they play really well. But the way that Chelsea played in the world, the way that they attacked, they at least deserved a point. It was really, really good from them. And the way that they set up, not only to get the goals and progress themselves, but to also stop City in that process. City may have scored 4, but I think overall from Chelsea, it was a really good setup that got them a point in the end.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it was that 3 behind Jackson playing up top of Cole Palmer on the right, Conor Gallagher down the middle, and Raheem Sterling down the left. I thought that those 3 behind Jackson were absolutely incredible. The way they were pressing, the runs were made, the interplay between them. I thought they gave City a real handful. And not very often you see Manchester City's midfield and defence running backwards towards their own goal. You're normally used to them having the lion's share of possession and being the ones in control. But to be fair, in this game, it seemed like Chelsea had all the control, all of the momentum in this game. And then City were almost, on the back foot in a ways. And it all started off quite well for City, for Chelsea, sorry. They're having some lovely interplay down the wings, causing City some real trouble. But then against maybe arguably the run of play, Manchester City are the ones who take the lead.
Yeah, Haaland with another goal from the pen. I think it was definitely a pen. I don't think there was too many shouts saying that it wasn't in the end for that. Took it well, took it nicely, and yeah, maybe got a goal, like you said, against the run of play. But it didn't take Chelsea long to respond. They got 2 back in pretty quick succession with Silva and Sterling. And Sterling, like you mentioned, one of those players playing behind Jackson who had a really fantastic game. We saw Chelsea really sort of come in, Sterling and Palmer playing really narrow. Not just, I think, to sort of link up with Jackson and have that quick interchange, but also to really help suffocate Man City in that middle and have more bodies to be able to run through them. I think that's where, particularly, I think actually going to the second half is where Chelsea really had the most players through that middle. City playing like a 4-2-4 almost. It was a really, really attacking setup from Pep Guardiola. With Rodri and Bernardo Silva as those 2 centre mids just completely suffocated by just an onslaught of Chelsea players. So many players coming into those central areas. And Sterling being one of them who kept popping up, almost a lot of interchange between them in the 3 behind, Gallagher sometimes dropping and Sterling drifting into the 10 and picking up the ball. And he's looked so good the last couple of weeks, really confident, driving through teams, and he was punishing City a lot in this game and probably was Chelsea's best player.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sterling was absolutely incredible. And the fact that he still isn't in the England squad just goes to show maybe the depth of talent that England have, but also, I don't know what he has to do to get in the team, really. But I will pull you up on one thing, Tobes, because I do disagree about the Haaland pen. I agree that it is a pen, but do you not think that we see that kind of challenge week in, week out in the league, and that the fact that it was given, it was just a bit of a soft call? And not only that initially it was Haaland who pulled Cucurella away from himself.
I think compared to other calls, I understand why you might think it's a soft call, but for me, I think they're just not given enough. I think when an arm goes around a waist and is pulled down, I feel like they're not given. In circumstances where they're both pulling each other, I can understand that it's going to be really difficult for a ref to give a pen, and there's maybe a slight in that, but for me, I don't think Haaland was particularly pulling or pushing in a way that we don't see in on every single corner, but it was just way over the line from Cucurella. Completely, it was almost like a rugby tackle in the end from Cucurella. The way he fell at his waist and Haaland was just completely taken out, and it was a ball that Haaland could quite have easily have won against Thiago Silva if he had not been pulled down for me.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. But to be fair, if anything, Haaland's second goal, he definitely deserved that. It was well worked play with Alvarez down the right hand side of Chelsea's left hand side. I thought Cucurella had a really fantastic game, but his inability to stop the cross coming to the box there kind of let him down a little bit. And then Haaland bundles the ball into the back of the net. And there's a shout of handball in all of it, but I think by the time that Haaland's elbow, if anything, does touch the ball is well over the line. And then Chelsea again respond, this time from Nicholas Jackson, initially from a Conor Gallagher shot, which is parried by Edison. And I do wonder, because just before that goal went in, Edison did actually, go down with a bit of an injury on his foot. I'm not sure if that impeded him anyway, but it did seem like a bit of a strange, clearance from him. But maybe the shot would just had a bit of movement to it. He couldn't quite get to it. But then Nicholas Jackson, right place, right time. And that's, 4 goals now in the last 2 games for him.
Yeah, he always seems to be getting in those positions. I think we've said that a lot so far this season, that there's no issue, particularly with his link-up play, particularly with his positioning or his speed and strength. He looks like a really good striker. It has just been that difficulty of putting the ball in the back of the net. I think against Spurs, he probably could have had 4 or 5 by the end. And it was good for him to get a hat-trick, to get those goals, get that confidence. And I wouldn't have been surprised sort of the way he's been finishing this season if that when that ball came out he would have missed it. No offense to him, I like him as a player, I think he's good, but I just can imagine seeing him miss it and then seeing the videos on social media afterwards. But it was good that he took a touch as well. I think a lot of players would have rushed that and tried to hit it first time the way it was sort of spinning out, but he took a touch, was able to look up and finish it well, which I think is an area that he is starting to improve in, starting to finish his chances a lot more. And that attacking unit for Chelsea is really starting to come together nicely.
Yeah, it really is. But it was almost, if anything, the defensive performance that kind of let Chelsea down today. But this time for Rodri's goal, I don't think he can do much about it. The ball kind of falls to the edge of the box for him. But I think Jamie Carragher said on commentary, it is a goalkeeper's worst nightmare when a defender just goes and sticks a foot out. And I know Thiago Silva has to do it, and to be fair, it almost goes wide, but it just completely wrongs for Robert Sanchez. He has no chance. And then City, again, take the lead in the game. And you think to yourself at that moment in time, that's going to be it. Rodri coming in late, coming for a clutch goal, a bit like he did against Sheffield United earlier on in the season. But again, Chelsea find a way. And it's this Chelsea side against big teams. They just, never know when to give up. But again, they find a way into it. But this time from Ahmed Brozier, who gets taken down in the box.
Yeah, it was really nice. Really nice, like dummy, just to completely bait Diaz into the block. I wouldn't say he was particularly looking for a foul. I think he just knew if he would have taken that shot, he wouldn't have got it away. Whereas in this case, I think he was probably expecting Diaz to just slide completely straight past him and then have an open shot on goal. And it was really nice, confident play from Brozier to do that. And speaking of confidence, Cole Palmer to be able to step up, little scuffle at the penalty spot. I don't really know what was going on. Kyle Walker was kicking off, Jackson was kicking off. I think Disasi was having a go at someone at some point. I'm not really sure exactly what it was about, because nobody seemed, it wasn't one of those where, they're going for the penalty spot to try and mess it up. It didn't look anything like that, so I don't know what it was. And Palmer was just standing well away from it, just trying to stay composed, and composed it was. What a penalty. 95th, 96th minute, put that away in the top corner, and then just shrug at the fans, and that said enough, and it just summed up an absolutely crazy game. And I've been trying to sort of break down this game and see like maybe where City may have gone wrong, Chelsea may have gone wrong, but there was just so much chaos, and I think both teams just really started to play into that. With Foden and Doku just both having games where they were just picking up in those really empty wide spaces, driving, going crazy. Chelsea going crazy in the press in the middle. Conor Gallagher having a really exciting, chaotic game. Loads of key passes, loads of ground duels won. I think he won 6 or 7 ground duels, 3 tackles from him as well. And it is just, I think, one of those games, once it started and we had those first goals after the first sort of half an hour, I think both teams lost a lot of their shape. I think Guardiola and Pochettino both were really animated on the sidelines in those last second half. And to be honest, I don't think many players were really listening to them. I think they were just going all out for the game and playing into it. And as a neutral, it was great. And I'm really glad that they all did.
Yeah, completely agree. As a neutral, it was the best game ever. But like, I think if you're Pep, I think you're mightily annoyed because I think at no point did City really have control of the game whatsoever. I think even by the fact that, late on in the game, maybe a bit too late, Guardiola brought on Kovacic. It just shows he really needed someone to get the foot on the ball. Maybe someone like a De Bruyne would have done that. But in this game, it feels like no one had to control the ball, and it was, a basketball match, if anything. I thought Reece James had a really good game, coming, not soon after being coming into the side and being injured for a long period of time. He came in and I think he really did a number on Doka. I thought, Reece James had a fantastic game. It's a shame he couldn't complete the full 90 minutes, but that maybe goes to show where he is at this moment in time. But yeah, I just think, the Chelsea midfield dominated Manchester City's midfield. And how often do you say Manchester City midfield gets dominated like that? I think, it is fantastic. And I think the Diaz tackle late on against Broja for the fourth goal and the Chelsea penalty just goes to show the desperation in that Man City side. And I think in no point in time do you see Ruben Diaz just making a sliding challenge like that, having no control whatsoever. I think this should epitomise, what Man City were feeling at that moment in time, because they were just like, Chelsea have got into this game so many times, we can't let that happen anymore. But then, they can't really do it against the smaller sides as we've seen, maybe like Brentford. So going forward, where do Chelsea go from here?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because they are struggling to keep to have that slow tempo build up and keep the ball, move it around and create enough chances. I think that's where their sort of chance creation struggles are from, is when a team is sitting back against them. It's that classic, they're having a low block and the team in possession is sort of passing around the box, waiting for something to open up, which is strange because in those situations you need quick, decisive touches, and we do see that in the centre of the pitch when they're playing the big sides. We see that against when Spurs are pressing, when City are pressing, and they are able to do it. Gallagher, Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez, all really good on the ball in that midfield, deeper, but I think it's just slightly further up the pitch is where they're losing that intricacy and that final pass. I think I'm not sure exactly what it is, because players like Palmer is someone who you could expect to play those final passes and to break down a low block. Jackson seems to be making the right runs, Sterling the same. I think it might just be a case potentially of missing maybe one attacking player up there. I think Gallagher, Caicedo and Enzo are really good, but I'm not sure if it works particularly well against a weaker side who are having a lower block as playing one of those in the more advanced position. Same with Enzo Fernandez. We saw that when he was playing as a number 10 earlier in the season. For me, it didn't just quite work. He's not that sort of player. I'm not sure who that play would be. Potentially for me, a fix could be playing Cole Palmer in the 10 against a weaker side and starting Mudryk out on the left, who came on and had a few bright sparks again. And I think that may help them. They'd still have a few of their intricate midfielders deeper, but then when they get to that low block, they should be able to maybe make a few more chances. But I'm not too sure, because it's such a... We never really see this teams playing really well against the good seeds and struggling against the bad ones.
Yeah, that's true. I think maybe, I've only just thought about him now, but the forgotten man, Christopher Nkunku, maybe when he comes back, and he's rumoured to be back in December, so that's a game or two away after the international break. So that could be, the missing piece for Chelsea. It's a shame that, oh my God, I can't remember his name. The young Chukwuemeka got injured so early on in the season, because it could have been him as well. But yeah, I think you make very fair points about Chelsea. They just need to, maybe do that again against the lower teams, and who knows what they'll be. I mean, I don't think Europe of some sort is out of the question. I think maybe the Champions League could be a stretch too far, but they've got plenty of games still to go, so maybe there's a chance. Manchester City, another game in which they've dropped points this season. Notably, they lost to Arsenal, they lost to Wolves, drawn here, and they're not looking as invincible as they were last season, especially towards the back end. But we know City starts slow and pick it up towards the second half of the season. They are still top of the league. A draw against your typical top six rival isn't a bad draw to have, obviously. But where do they go from here? Because they've got Liverpool in the first game back after the international break, which could be huge. And Liverpool are only, I think, 1 point behind them in the league at this moment in time, level on points with Arsenal. How do you see that one faring up? Because that could be tasty.
Yeah, it could be 5-5. This game could already be beaten in 2 weeks. You could imagine it.
I don't think my heart could take that.
But no, I think with City, I think maybe those games that they have lost, it was that spell where they didn't have Rodri, and I could imagine Poch would have seen those games and seen that the way to stop City having the ball, dominating the game, is to suffocate Rodri. And that really happened in this game. And if Liverpool can do that again next week, if Pep doesn't have an answer to that suffocation, whether that's playing potentially another 8 a little bit deeper, dropping maybe sort of Julian Alvarez or Foden, and starting with Kovacic, Rodri and Bernardo Silva as a 3 to give Rodri a little bit more support. Because I think the way he tried to avoid that in this game was to keep those really wide players and just get it out to them as quickly as possible. It worked in an attacking sense, but it really didn't work in the defensive sense. So maybe Pep finding a balance between that in the Liverpool game. Yeah, it was a funny one. They didn't dominate the ball as much as they wanted to, didn't dominate the play, and then when the players were driving at them, their defensive structure, I don't think, was used to losing the ball that quickly, and I think that's where they were punished. I think Diaz and Gvardiol, we normally see them defending a lot higher, having a lot more time to sort of see the play before they're being countered and before they're being attacked, and that must have come as a surprise for them. So yeah, I think just giving Rodri a bit more support, trying to keep their foot on the ball, because is it a home game for City, I think, against Liverpool?
Yeah.
That should help them potentially to keep that ball and keep that shape, and I'm sure Pep's going to come up with something to fix it. But now it's up to Klopp to maybe try and counter the potential counter, as well as trying to suffocate Rodri, which will be such a good tactical clash, I think, between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. Well then, we should move on to our next game, because we have a lot more exciting games to talk about. Wolverhampton Wanderers 2, Tottenham Hotspurs 1. Spurs are back, aren't they? 2 defeats in a row. No, 2 defeats in a row now. Find themselves slipping to 4th in the table, which is, I don't think the end of the road, because the other teams ahead of them are all top quality sides who are in and amongst it. And, Spurs by no means are out of the title race, if you Spurs fans want to think that. But it was a fantastic performance by Gary O'Neill's Wolverhampton Wanderers side. They've been so unlucky so far this season with refereeing decisions, VAR decisions, and they've generally played really well. And I think, actually, Ange coming to the league and doing so well as he has, 3 back-to-back Manager of the Month awards for him, I think he's overshadowed what a good job Gary O'Neill's done at Wolves, because, coming in, I think it was only 3 days before the start of the season, on the back of getting sacked by Bournemouth, which, at the time was harsh, but we agreed with the decision. Now, coming back and looks like he's doing a fantastic job. But it was Spurs who had a really quick start to the game through Brennan Johnson, who Pedro Porro initially got the ball. Kind of looked like he slipped or /left it for Kulusevski. I'm not quite sure which one it was, maybe a bit of both. But then Kulusevski with a lovely drag back to Porro, Brennan Johnson in the back of the 1-0. Then it was Wolves, who just kept on into the game, didn't they?
Yeah, it was a nice quick start for Spurs, like you said. And then I think from that point onwards, it was Wolves who were probably the better team. A lot more shots, 17-6, much higher expected G over the game. And I think with Spurs, we could have maybe predicted this with the players that they are missing. This game, they're missing Maddison, missing Van de Ven, missing Udogie, and missing Romero. That's 4 of their starting 11, 4 of some of their best players so far this season, and 4 players who I think it was quite evident were missing today, especially in that defensive sense, against a good attacking side from Wolves, a side that, even though missing Pedro Neto, still have Hwang and Cunha up there who are able to damage. And I think maybe Spurs missing a few players, especially in that defensive side. I think Pedro Porro was sort of the only one who was the only starter in that back 4. Normally, is the one who's bombing forward, getting forward and being really good attacking for them. And I think that really opened up the game for Roman Ait-Nouri, who had a fantastic game this week. We see him as a bit of he sort of comes and goes, Ait-Nouri. He seems to have a good game one week and then an absolute stinker the next week. But he had a really good game this week, 10 out of 12 ground duels, 2 tackles and 5 out of 5 dribbles, and really took advantage of that space behind Porro, which normally would have been covered by Romero or Van der Ven. Normally, obviously, Romero playing on that right-hand side, but with both of those missing and it being Eric Dyer and... Was Højbjerg the others? No, who was playing centre-back in this game?
No, it was Eric Dyer and Ben Davies.
Ben Davies, sorry, yeah, and then Emerson Royal was left-back, wasn't he? Yeah. I think that drop is for a centre-back partnership is massive in comparison. And it may have taken Wolves until the 90th minute to get back, but I think they were knocking on the door all game.
Yeah, I hate you. You've stolen all of my notes for Ryan Ait-Nouri because I highlighted him as well as a player who did fantastically well. Just on him before I move on to the goals, I think it's one where he got quite neutralised under Lopetegui last season when he went to 4 at the back, and because he's a player who also, some of his best work is in the final third. Unfortunately, if he just has that final product, he could be a fantastic player. But quite often he gets into really great goal-scoring positions, great crossing positions, but the final ball isn't always there. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't in his defence. But if he can hone that, then he could be a fantastic left wing back going forward, and a left back for a top team because they'll have most of the possession. But I think in the 3 at the back, playing left wing back, he is fantastic there. But then yes, on to the goals, and it was really well worked from Wolves, because you could tell as the game went on, the momentum started to change and shift, and then Spurs were sitting back, which is something uncharacteristic of the Ange Postecoglou side. You expect them to always be in the front foot. You've actually seen him say in interviews the fact that regardless of the time on the clock, he wants the Spurs side to always be front foot, always be attacking. But then Eric Dyer gets the ball from Vicaria, and he just puts the ball straight out of play. Gary O'Neill's hurrying the team on, throwing the ball back to his players. And I think Cunha with the cross on the left-hand side to Pablo Sarabia, and what a touch and what a finish. I mean, that touch on his right foot to set it up for the volley with his left makes it completely. And Pablo Sarabia, now at 31 years old, a player who's played for Real Madrid, played for Sevilla, played for PSG, you really expect him to, be a starter in this Wolves side and really be the main man, and it hasn't always worked out for him. But I think, that bit of quality just goes to show, the career that he has had and the quality that he does possess on his day. But then again, it was him again for the second goal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, he only played 12 minutes and he got a goal and an assist. You can't really ask for much more as a super sub. Played it into Lamina, put it in the back of the net. Absolute scenes at the Molineux. And Sarabia, it's so strange. If you would have said sort of 5-6 years ago he would be a Wolves player and not even starting, you would think, what are you on about? But he's still got that quality. Maybe if he's missing in other areas, he may not be as quick as he once was. I don't know why he potentially doesn't start. He obviously might not train very well, blah, blah, blah. Could be a number of reasons. But yeah, made the absolute difference today. And got Wolves a huge 3 points. On the Spurs side, I don't think they can really be too disappointed with the injuries and suspensions they've had. They were on such a good run before, and I think any little change to the way that they were playing is going to end that sort of run, whether it meant they were going to lose or whether it meant that they were just maybe not going to play as well. And to lose that many players that quickly and the run to end, it's now looking a little bit worrying for Spurs. They've got some tough fixtures coming up. They're still going to have players out. Maddison and Van der Ven are going to be out for months, they're saying. But I think the expectations compared to what they were at the start of the season still can't be disappointed in where they are in the league and how many points they've got so far, even if the next couple games they're not picking up as many as they were right at the start of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I think I saw a stat that I'm not sure I'm going to get it exactly right, but Spurs were the biggest overachievers of points in the league by 6. And don't quote me on that, because I think that it was roughly 6. It was 6 point something, I think it was. Which, looking back on it, and I was trying to think about the games that they've had, and I thought, okay, maybe against Brentford, it was a bit of Maddison quality. I thought Sheffield United was a game that, they could have lost on another day. It was thanks to Richarlison who came off the bench. And then also Richarlison is another player who we haven't necessarily mentioned, but he's also out injured at the moment in time. It doesn't seem to be like a serious injury, but another player who, could be a squad option for them and very useful, and has been starting games for them, despite the fact that he's a very polarising figure. People aren't necessarily quite sure of his quality. But, Spurs still were able to bring on the likes of Bryan Hill, who, had a fantastic loan spell out in Spain in the second half of last season, did really well there. And they still have quality, Eric Dyer, Ben Davies. These are Premier League quality players. Hopefully for Spurs, they can maybe gel together and maybe find some consistency in form, because they're definitely going to need them, like you said. But I think, top four would be a fantastic achievement for them. And for all we know, they could go on another run and win the next few games. And, we're talking about them being outside shouts to the league again. But Gary O'Neill and Wolverhampton Wanderers, a fantastic start for them. A team we had necessarily maybe going down, which looks a bit silly from us now. And the fact, I think, more than anything, that Wolves just don't give up. I mean, they've scored so many late goals this season. They scored the winner against Everton by Klasic. They scored against City very late on a few games ago. And this game now against Spurs, I think they're a team that never gives up. And Gary O'Neill just managed to get the best out of these players, and which at the beginning of the season looked like it's going to be some difficult task following this Julian Lopetegui side, but he's done fantastically well.
Yeah, and I think one team who are going to be really regretting letting him go is Bournemouth, despite the fact that they pulled off a really good and a really great, not just a win, but a great performance. Bournemouth 2, Newcastle 0, and it definitely wasn't a smash and grab or a last minute winner. Bournemouth absolutely dominated this game.
Yeah, they really did. And obviously going into the game, a bit similar of a narrative to Spurs. Newcastle have a lot of injuries, they don't have many players available. But in Bournemouth's defence, you can only beat what's in front of you. And on the day, they beat a Newcastle side who are much higher up in the table than they are, who are in the Champions League. A lot of hype going around Newcastle. And Bournemouth, from beginning to end, looked like they were the better team, looked like they were the team in the Champions League, and dominated them. And it was, in a way, it was nice to see, because I think not only results have been coming for Bournemouth. They've been getting better. They're picking up points. They recently picked up the win against was it Burnley? Yeah, Burnley recently. And you thought to yourself, it's only a matter of time before that really convincing, possession-based, Iraola tactical masterclass. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but one of those really dominating performances was going to come, and it was this game. And I thought, from beginning to end, they were fantastic to a man. And it's always helpful when you have someone like the likes of Dominic Solanke who can just put the ball in the back of net.
Yeah, he's been one of their best players, I think, this season. He hasn't maybe scored loads of goals, but he is always the focal point of their attacks. Really hard worker, really good presser, and fantastic hold-up play, which we see a lot. And he bagged a brace, and there was a couple more chances, not just for Solanke, throughout the whole game. And to be honest, I think the best Newcastle player on the pitch was Nick Pope. He made 8 saves, stopped it being more than 2, and it could have quite easily been. Bournemouth just set up so well with Solanke as that focal point. And it was a slightly different set. We saw Kluivert sort of playing centrally. I don't think he had the best game ever. I think we've definitely seen him play better in a Bournemouth shirt, but Semenyo and Tavernier out wide I think were really, really good. Newcastle played really, really narrow this game. Trippier was really struggling to get up and get out wide and was actually quite narrow a lot of the time, and Bournemouth really exploited that. I know Newcastle have had a lot of injuries in this game. They played a very weakened side compared to probably what their best 11 would be, and one of their best players, Trippier, was just unable to do the business really. We saw the Bournemouth fullbacks really coming up high and wide against Newcastle, where we would expect Newcastle to be doing that, and there was just no way out really for Newcastle. Bournemouth really pinned them back, got in behind and exploited those spaces. And speaking of Trippier, like I was saying, he wasn't really effective. He was struggling not only attacking but also defensively. He had 6 crosses in the game, none of which were accurate, and he lost possession 28 times overall. Not just him having a bad game, but I think the players around him being less of a quality and also not performing as well as they have been just meant it was Not easy for Bournemouth, but it gave them that opportunity to play the way they want to play and get a massive 3 points.
Yeah, and credit to Ariola and the way he set up his Bournemouth side, because, like we've said, with the injuries that this Newcastle side have had, the opportunity, well, the players who can make those progressive passes and break the lines and create those chances were missing, it was only Trippier, really, and with Tonali suspended, no Bruno Guimaraes in midfield, Joe Linton playing out of position, Anthony Gordon out of position, there was a real lack of creativity. I mean, Almiron going off injured, that's another one to add to the list, and that could be a huge blow. Who knows how long he's going to be out. Hopefully for Newcastle's sake, not too long, because they desperately can't afford to lose any more players. But it really, it highlighted that, Trippier was the one that you had to stop. And when Bournemouth did stop him, that's when they really nullified Newcastle. And, someone else had to step up. But with a young and inexperienced squad, they couldn't quite do it. But then, coming up to the goals, I think it was a bit of good fortune in the way that Solanke found himself at the edge of the 6-yard box with the ball at his feet. But he was sharper than the Newcastle defenders, and he gets the ball in the back of the net. I think, we've mentioned Pope having 8 saves. I think maybe it was one where he should have saved it. Maybe the power on the shot was just a bit too much, maybe being a bit harsh. But I thought so close to his left hand for being a goalkeeper who's renowned for shot stopping. Maybe he could have saved that. But who knows? It was a fantastic strike. And then for the second one, Sinisterra hits the post, and then Solanke just bundles it in for Solanke. Solanke just bundles it in for Bournemouth, on the edge of the box. And, Sinisterra, I think he had a hat-trick of chances, in which he could have scored late on in the game. And, Bournemouth were just a better team. 2.4 XG to 0.49, 19 shots to 8, 3 big chances versus 0. And they had 6 counterattacks, Bournemouth. Newcastle had none. And then from the 6 counterattacks, they had 6 shots. So every time they counterattacked, they had a shot on target, which I think was just fantastic. And it just goes to show how great they were this game.
Yeah, it's just a question now if they can carry it on. Only on 9 points so far this season. They have struggled. They are right down there. It's probably, at the moment, you'd say, for relegation contenders, the 3 newly promoted sides and Bournemouth, you would probably put in with them. Hopefully they can keep it going. Hopefully they can pick up points, because when they play like this and we're watching them play like this, it's brilliant, and it's really good to see a side who maybe are weaker in some areas still play that good football and for it to come off. And I think one side that we have said that so far this season that have tried to play good football, it hasn't come off, and that is Burnley, who unfortunately lost to Arsenal 3-1 this week, moving on to our next game.
Yeah, they did. And let's focus on Arsenal. Let's focus on the team who won the game and the positives first, because I thought it was another good performance for Arsenal at home, in which they dominated most of the possession. They had most of the momentum in the game, and it was really attack versus defence, big team versus little team. And, they really showed Burnley their place. And, that's 5 consecutive defeats for Burnley. It might be more than that, but that's all the recent form guide in the Premier League table on Google would show. Maybe they've lost more than that. They probably have. But yeah, it was fantastic. And I think, one man who had a fantastic game was Leandro Trossard up front. With no Gabriel Jesus and no Nketiah, he was the man who Arteta decided to go up front with, and he had a fantastic game, Really the focal point of the team, really held it up well, connected the link-up play, and, ended up getting his goal as well, didn't he?
Yeah, really good performance from him, and I much prefer the way he plays to Nketiah, and I think it suits us so much better. It's a lot more like Jesus in some ways. Trossard doesn't particularly drop as deep as Jesus tends to. Sometimes we see Jesus cropping up in the centre circle, picking up the ball and driving it forward. Trossard isn't particularly that adventurous, but he does like to drop on. He likes to push out to the left and to the right and link up with the other wingers, something that Nketiah definitely doesn't do enough for me for Arsenal. It's just not the way he plays. I think he's a good player, and I think in another side he'd play really well, but for me it's always got to be Jesus or Trossard playing up front as opposed to Nketiah, especially against a lower block that Burnley were playing. It was a lot less progressive from Burnley this week. They really did sit back, and in that first sort of half an hour, I really think we struggled to break them down. I think they defended really, really well. And it took a lot of movement and a lot of that dropping in and linking up from Trossard to break them down eventually. We were able to get a goal just before half-time, which was big because I was getting a bit worried going into half-time 0-0. And Trossard just threw himself at the back post, took a massive knock for it, but was able to put it in the back of the net. And yeah, that first half we played well, knocked it around well, but Burnley defended actually really, really well. I thought they could have got something out of that game, not for that goal at half-time. The second half, a lot more open from both sides, and we saw 2 goals for Arsenal and a goal for Burnley in that second half once it had opened up.
Yeah, and to be fair, at 1-1, when who was it? Who equalised? Was it? Oh yeah, Brownhill equalised for Burnley. Yeah, and I thought really, Koleosho really did well standing up Tomiyasu because Tomiyasu couldn't get anywhere near him. And it was a bit fortunate in the way that, the ball came off Gabriel, I think it was, to kind of beat David Raya. But I thought to myself, okay, come out of the second half, and Burnley have gone for it because they need to. They're losing. At the moment of time, they're bottom of the league table. And I thought to myself, well, okay, maybe it's only going to take one of those performances, one of those goals, and, maybe they could do something now. They can give themselves a bit of hope and belief. But unfortunately, they kind of just shoot themselves in the foot. It was moments later, really, from a corner, and it was really bad marking. And the fact that Saliba, I think it was 3 Arsenal players versus 2 Burnley defenders, and then Saliba just ends up running on his own completely unmarked, and he ends up finding himself ahead of Trafford, and the fact that Trafford goes to jump for it, but then Saliba just jumps unchallenged and just nods it in the back of the net, and you think to yourself, oh, that's all it took. And from that perspective, it was really disappointing for Burnley fans, and the company, because they're shooting themselves in the foot if they defend like that week in, week out.
Yeah, it was just Saliba. He just went literally just round the keeper, started behind him, just walked round in the goal in front of him and nodded it in. And we looked really dangerous from a lot of corners. I think that's a combination of the way we were setting up and the way that Burnley were defending quite poorly from them. Trafford was really struggling. And it was another aspect of Trossard's game that he did really well. His set-piece deliveries were fantastic from corners. I think we had 3 or 4 really good opportunities from corners throughout the whole game. A lot of them delivered by Trossard, putting it as much on the keeper as he could. And it was our third goal that was exactly the same, whipped in to the keeper. I think it was off a Burnley head, off the bar, flicked out. And then Zinchenko with a lovely scissor kick volley into the top bins. Really nice finish. And another one of the Arsenal goal scorers, Zinchenko, who I think was probably one of the best players on the pitch in that day alongside Trossard. We've seen this season he hasn't had the impact that he did last season. Still inverting, but there have been some quite defensive struggles. And I think a lot of Zinchenko's defensive struggles are actually maybe not where we would expect them to be. I think when you think of Zinchenko, you would think he would maybe struggle against a winger trying to take him on, because obviously he used to be playing higher up the pitch. He used to be a number 10 almost, and he still is for Ukraine in some ways. But his take on versus percentage is actually really high. It's one of the highest in the leagues almost. The way that he defends one-on-one when it's on the ground. Where he has really struggled is any balls over the top and his defensive positioning. We've seen us get caught out quite a few times in balls played in behind, overlapping fullbacks. That is definitely an area that has been targeted, and I think why Zinchenko hasn't been getting the minutes so far this season. But this game, he almost didn't put a foot wrong for me. He was defensively solid, he made a lot of ground duels, his positioning was good, and he was able to get on the ball and dominate and play in that inverted left back on that left side at 8 fantastically, put in so many good balls, so many good passes. And to be honest, he actually pushed Declan Rice into having a quiet game. The way he was occupying the space that Rice normally does, and even progressing it past that, it meant that Rice had to sit in a double pivot alongside Jorginho a lot of the time and just let Zinchenko play. He was playing that well. And hopefully that's the Zinchenko we see in the games moving forward, and that he can keep this up, because he has made a really big difference this game, and he does for Arsenal when he's playing well.
Yeah, and I think Arsenal are such an intelligent side that a player like Declan Rice and Jorginho midfield can recognise the fact that Zinchenko is having more joy going forward, so they are just going to change the way they play in game and just let him go with the ball and make those passes and create those chances. But a player who didn't have a good day for Arsenal, and we've got to talk about him, Fabio Vieira. He ended up getting sent off. Definite red card for me. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think for me it was just unnecessary. It was just a bit poor, and now he's going to be suspended for 3 games. It's going to be a bit of a miss because, suspensions and injuries at this stage of the season, coming back from the international break, going into the winter fixtures, it's going to be really jam-packed. They need as many players available as possible. He had a very hot start to the season in February. He's kind of cooled off a little bit now, but that red card won't help him or anyone really.
Yeah, it's been between him and Havertz, who is going to be playing with Odegaard out. And I think Fabio Vieira could have had a really good chance to get a good run of games in that side, in that right-sided 8 position that he definitely prefers to the left, as well as Havertz. Both of them being left-footed, they like sort of cutting on that right-sided 8. But it was just a silly challenge. I don't think there was any sort of aggression or malice in it. It was just silly, just lazy, sticks the legs out. And it was a really dangerous challenge in the end. And yeah, going to miss the next 3 games, which is a big loss because we have got a lot of players out at the moment. Especially with Champions League games coming up as well. He will obviously, hopefully, play in the Champions League, give someone else a rest. But in the league, if we need someone to come as an impact, he's going to be missing. So, yeah, it was unfortunate to see, but definitely a red card.
Yes, and just a quick word on Burnley, who are now rock bottom of the table, 4 points in the league, 1 win, 1 draw. It's not looking good for Vincent Kompany's men, but I think I saw the next 5 fixtures, and they're against they're all against sides at the bottom half of the table. I think bar maybe Brighton. I hope that's right. So it's a massive few games for him. And all the sides at the bottom of the table, none of them have sacked their managers. They've all stuck with their managers. They all believe in the vision and the game plan. So it's now or never, because if they don't get a lot of points out of the next 5 fixtures, then they're going to be in the situation where they've got Vincent Kompany in charge, but the side are going to be cut adrift. And then there's no point sacking the manager because no one's going to want to take the job, so they're going to have to stick with him throughout. It seems like now, but 4 points after 12 games, it's not great, is it?
No, it's really not looking good. Like I was saying, in the first half, they defended well, and there were periods of the game where they were able to play it out from the back really well. They have a similar setup to how a lot of the top sides play out the back, where the goalkeeper's playing into a centre midfield, he's bouncing it back to the goalie or flicking it round the corner to like a fullback pushing up or a midfielder, and they're able to get it into those positions with a lot of space, almost at the in between their defensive third and their midfield third. They're getting a lot of time on the ball, and they did in this Arsenal game, getting a lot of the time on the ball in that position. But then it's just like it stops and they don't know what to do with it or where to go. Not many of the runners want to be pushing through. Berger or Brownhill, I don't think, are particularly amazing carriers. They're looking for long balls over the top, maybe to Koleosho, which is just normally quite easily being dealt with. And I think it is just that transition. They seem to have the back end actually quite decent, and it's maybe flipped from what we thought at the start of the season, I think. But it's just getting the ball and progressing it forward. There seems to be something not quite right. They seem to have almost changed a little bit too much to focusing on that defensive side, which they did look strong in. But maybe against a weaker side, they'll be able to progress it better, progress it through weaker midfields like they did at the start of the season and get a few more goals. And they could pull out some results. But like you said, they kind of need to fairly quickly, because it's, 12 games in, 4 points. They are really going to struggle if these next 4 or 5 games are against those fellow potential relegation contenders and they lose to them. They're just going to get further adrift at the bottom.
Yeah, Vincent Kompany's got the international break to try and sort something out, and they really need to get some more points now because they're looking quite bleak. But then moving on then to Liverpool 3, Brentford 0. A flattering scoreline on paper, but I think this was a very closer game than most people thought. I think Brentford started off. Well, neither team really started off well. Both were quite loose with their possession, very sloppy passes. But then Brentford, were the ones who were creating most in the beginning of the game. It was actually from a set piece in which Mark Flecken was taking a free kick from his halfway line, and the ball went into the box. And the ball ends up at Johan Visser in the 6-yard area, and he just chose to try and flick on the ball. But then he should be going for goal at the moment in time. But there's a mad scramble. Ethan Pinnock ends up trying to take a shot, and then it just goes narrowly wide. Another Brentford player tried to get it on the end of that shot, but can't quite make it. And Liverpool scrambled to get the ball away. But eventually they do make the breakthrough, and it was that man Mo Salah yet again.
Yeah, he's now on 149 Premier League goals. He's 2 more off, and he's in the all-time top 10, which is just crazy. He is slowly creeping, I think, into that bracket of being in people's all-time Premier League 11. I think he has to be. I feel like he's still underrated. I feel like people, just because I think people think he just scores goals and that he just scores tap-ins, but he is just such an amazing player, such a pivotal player for a Liverpool side who have been in that top 4 or 5 for the past 6 or 7 years now, and he's just done it again. He can't seem to go wrong this season, and he's still going under the radar this season as someone who has probably been one of the players of the season. I'm not sure exactly how many goals. I think he has maybe 10 goals this season, 10 goals, 4 assists so far, something like that. Just crazy. And another really, really good performance from him. He had a few really good passes. He's been a really good creator so far this season. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he may have created one of the Nunez goals that was ruled out. Yeah, 2 goals again this week. Just fantastic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think people still underrate him. I think just because of the fact that they expect it from him. So now when he does something amazing, that people are like, oh, that's just Mo Salah. There's something he does. But the fact is that with Nunez playing the majority of the games up front this season, Salah's finding himself wider and further out on the wing. So when he does get those chances in the middle, they're less often, and he's more clinical when he does it, because normally we're used to seeing him taking 4 or 5 chances and needing them to score just 1 goal. But now he's in those positions and he's converting them, and he's got great output. I think, yeah, like I said, Nunez has 2 offside goals correctly ruled out. It was a bit annoying watching the game, because you just think to yourself, you can hold out, maybe you can get there, especially for the one where he overhead bicycle kicked it in the net from a corner. But I think the first one, it was so close. It was marginal. It was a toenail. But it was one where got to give credit. It was the correct decision. He was offside, and whether it's a toenail or a hair length, if it's offside, it's offside, and that's fair enough. I think that Nunez and Salah link up is something to be very excited about as a Liverpool fan. The fact that Nunez is able to find Salah, Salah is able to find Nunez, and they're linking up really well. It just goes to show, I think Nunez is definitely making that spot up front his own. And it's just, Jota or Diaz on the left-hand side. I think Jota at the moment in time is looking like he's cementing the place. But, Diaz could very well, in a couple, come back after national break and just hit the ground running again. So who knows? But it's a fantastic performance by Liverpool. I think, Brentford did have a bit on the counter-attack, though. And Bournemouth had a one-on-one versus Alisson, which, if they're coming against anyone else, maybe that goes in. But just the fact that Alisson, he's so renowned for his one-on-one shot-chopping ability. I thought the midfield had a good game. I think Cody Gakpo in midfield had a very good game, with Curtis Jones out, Ryan Gravenberch out, Alexis McAllister suspended. I think that midfield of Liverpool did a really good job against a well-run, well-drilled Brentford side, who were around for being resolute in midfield. But then in the end of the day, Liverpool do take the chances. Tsimikas with 2 assists as well. I just thought it was a very well-rounded performance by Liverpool just before the national break and just before the game against Manchester City.
Yeah, good for Liverpool to get a clean sheet as well. They defended well in this game for the majority of it. Alisson had a really good game, like you said, and I think that's a part of the Liverpool side maybe that's been missing so far this season. Maybe why people aren't necessarily shouting them as being potentially in the title race. I think a lot of people are, but not everyone. Potentially maybe because of those defensive fragilities, especially in that midfield area where it doesn't seem there is a defensive 6. But yeah, really good, well-rounded performance from Liverpool. Big 3 points. Only a point behind Man City now. Definitely up there and definitely contenders this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we move on, did you see Endo's challenge on Norgard and whether or not you thought it was a red card or not?
I did, and I'm not really sure, because it wasn't the challenge particularly, it was like the step after was where the issue was, and I'm not sure. I can understand why it wasn't given. But actually, that's just me being completely sitting on the fence, isn't it? Saying I can understand why it wasn't given. I can understand why Frank was mad. I'm going to say for me it wasn't. I don't think it was. I think it would have been very harsh. And I don't think there was... I feel like with a stamp or like a step, there's got to be intent if it comes after the challenge. And for me, that wasn't there.
Yeah, I agree that it wasn't a red card. I think the still looks bad. If you look at the still in isolation, it looks like it's a red. But if you look at the motion in real time, I think it's not a red. I think it's just both players going for the ball and you just go, it's a 50-50. So I think, to be fair, the fact that he didn't get any card at all, I think he probably deserved a yellow for it, if anything. And the foul to Brentford, I don't think it was a red. And I don't think it was an orange either. I think it was just a yellow card and you move on. But yeah, Brentford, not the best game for them, but they don't expect to win these games. Brentford's still a fantastic side, and they'll be fine, won't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think they still, like you said, even in this game, if they didn't even get a goal, they still played well and they still have good movement, and they are a good side. And I definitely think come the end of the season, we could see Brentford finish in 10th, which very nicely leads us on to the quiz, to Tenable. Come on.
Yes, it does. And obviously we didn't have Tenable last week. It was just me and my lonesome. So it's good to have it back. If you're unfamiliar with the game, it is just a game that has become popularized through football, I suppose, or ITV if you want to go before football and YouTube.
Shout out Warwick Davies.
Yes, shout out. And all you have to do is just name. You have a topic and you have to name 10 people, players, clubs, anything. Just your top, just 10 of something for the designated topic. If you're unfamiliar with the game, go check it out on our previous podcast we've done. We've done so well so far. But I think I'm leading. Am I?
You are. I got 10 and then 5, which was a poor performance from me last time we did this, and you had 9 and then 8. Was it?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
I can't remember what score you got last week. Now, what was your top 10 last time we did this?
I don't remember. I'm going to have to go back a long time. But it's fine. It's fine. As long as we know the total scores, I'm winning, you're losing. That'll probably change.
We'll have to double check the total scores because I actually can't remember what they are.
We'll have to double check.
Do I have it written down? I don't even know if I do. This is very poor.
But it's fine. It's fine because while I'm guessing, you've got time to look back and check. But yes, so I wonder who wants to go first this week. Maybe do you want to go first in terms of guessing since you weren't here last week? And so,
Yeah, sure. Let's go for it. We'll also just confirm as well, you get 3 lives for 3 incorrect guesses. And then once you have that 4th guess and it's wrong, you're done. That's the time stops, 5 minutes normally. Stops there, and then that's the end of the game.
Yes, just sort of clarify because different people play different ways. But okay, Toby, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I want you to name me 10 currently playing Portuguese players in Europe, not including the Premier League.
Okay.
I don't know why I've done it like this, but I have. So
10 active Portuguese players outside of the Premier League.
In Europe.
In Europe, sure. I don't think I'll be pulling out any Brazilian league players anyway, but no.
Well, in my head I had Saudi Arabia, that's why.
Ah, good shout.
Yeah,
That's a good shout, actually.
Okay, well, Your time starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, I feel like my strat here is to go round like the leagues one by one. So I think I'm going to have to start in La Liga, and I'm going to go for João Felix.
Yes, that is tenable. I thought you were going to say I'm going to start in Portugal.
That would probably be a good one. But I'm going to stick with La Liga. I'm going to stick with Barcelona, and I'm going to go for João Cancelo.
That is tenable.
Are there any more I can think of from Barcelona?
See, I think this is an easy one. I just wonder how long you're going to take to get all 10.
To do it. Okay, so Real Madrid, I don't think I've got any there either. I don't think there's any starters for Real Madrid who are Portuguese anyway. Not that I can think of. Are there any in Barcelona that I'm missing? No. Okay. Atletico Madrid. They must have. It's probably better to think of the Portuguese national team, actually, isn't it? Okay. I'm going to go for Rafael Guerreiro.
That is tenable, yes.
Of Bayern Munich.
Yes.
I'm going to go for... Sorry, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, you forget him because Alphonso Davies has played left-back most games.
Yeah. I'm going to go for Renato Sanchez.
That is tenable, yes.
Sticking with PSG, if Renato Sanchez is still even there, I never know, he moves around so much. I'm going to go for Vitinha.
Yes, that is tenable. Got 5 names.
I'm also going to go for... I can't remember his name. He's the left back for PSG. I think Nuno Mendes, that's it.
Yeah.
Nuno Mendes. Okay.
You've got 6 players and you've had 2 minutes.
Okay, that's a decent start. Let's try and think of some forwards, maybe some strikers. Who have we got? Who normally plays? He's just signed for PSG. Gonçalo Ramos.
Ah, yes. That is tenable.
God, they got a decent amount PSG. 4 there.
Yeah.
What else could we have?
If you were struggling, my tip was going to be PSG.
Nice. Okay, I've got another one. AC Milan left winger, Rafael Leao.
Yes, that is tenable. I'm surprised you didn't get him first, actually. That was where my head went to first.
Okay. I'm going to go for a punt here. I might lose a life. But I'm going to go for William Carvalho.
Yes, that is tenable. He's at the Betis.
The defensive midfield. Is he still at Betis?
Yeah, I believe so. So you've got 9.
Nice.
2 minutes on the clock. No stress.
Let's try and get an interesting one as the last one.
I just wanted to ease you back into it, I didn't know what kind of form you'd be in.
That's very kind. It's very kind.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit too kind.
Who else could we have? Oh, I'm actually kind of struggling a bit here. Oh, God, who else is there? I think he's still at Napoli. A left back, a legend from when I used to play FIFA 17 maybe. Seasons online with Napoli. Mario Rui.
I think he's tenable, but I'm just going to check. You've still got a minute. You've still got a minute.
I'll
20.
try and think of another one if not.
Yeah, he is tenable.
Nice. We'll take a 10 out of 10. Thanks very much for that very kind list, Mevin.
It was. You had, you had 1 minute left. But yes, you got Mario Rui. I just wanted to ease you back into it, Tobes, give you some confidence.
So kind. So kind.
Yeah.
I've just checked the scores.
Okay.
And you were on 17 from your last 2 weeks, and I was on 15. So I'm now on 25. So an 8 this week to pull you level.
Okay.
And are you ready for your list?
Remember, I've been very kind to you just now.
Can't change the list now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I suppose so.
It's a good list. It's like a classic list. Okay, so Mevin, your football tenable this week is the top 10 goalkeepers with the most Premier League clean sheets.
Oh, I hate
and
you.
your time starts now.
Let's go with Peter Schmeichel.
Unfortunately, he is not tenable.
Peter is not tenable. Okay, that's
That
a
is
great
life
start.
lost. That was a shock miss from this list. I would have expected him to be on there as well.
Let's go with Petr Cech.
And you have got number 1 with 202 clean sheets.
Okay, who's been in the league for a while? See, I'm thinking, how long was David Seaman in the Premier League? I don't think too much. I'll write them down. Let's go with Pepe Reina.
Pepe Reina is 7th with 136.
136. Let's go with David De Gea.
David De Gea is a great shout and a name I was very surprised to see this high in the list. He is 4th with 147.
Yeah, he's been at United for ages. Trying to think now, which keepers have been in the league for ages. Let's go. Oh no. In my head, I've got Tim Howard and Mark Schwarzer, but I'm not sure if I want to say them just yet. Yeah.
A minute and a half gone.
Thank you. So I've also got Paul Robinson in my head. I'm trying to think of keepers who've been in the league for a while. I've also got Shay Given in my head. David James is in my head as well. But I'm also thinking more recent, like, is Edison already there? Maybe.
You're approaching the 2-minute mark.
Yeah.
3 so far.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start writing some names at some point. But I'm trying to think. Oh. Edwin van der Sar wasn't... Maybe Fulham. Yeah. Van der Sar. Who was Chelsea? Kepa Courtois now. Liverpool Rainer Dudek. Allison. No, maybe I'll chuck Allison on there. I don't think it's him. So I've got a lot of names.
You're halfway through now.
Yeah.
I think you should get some names on the board.
Yeah, I think so too. So I'm not gonna. Who should I go with? Who was Okay, I'm gonna say David Seaman.
David Seaman is tenable in the 5th position, 141.
Okay, definitely enough. David Seaman. Let's go with. God, who do I go with? Edwin van der Sar.
Edwin van der Sar is joint 8th. There are 3 players joint 8th, all on 132.
132. So Edwin's on there. I don't feel comfortable saying. How long is that?
You've got a few names floating around. A
Yeah.
few maybes on there.
I know.
How late do you leave it to shout them? You've
What's
still got
my time?
3 incorrect guesses. It's now 3 minutes 40 gone. You've got 1:20 left, and you've still got 5 names to get.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you need to start getting through these.
Okay, I didn't say him, but Hugo Lloris.
Hugo Lloris is not tenable, unfortunately.
Okay, let's go with David James.
David James, number 2, 169. He is tenable. 4 left.
Shay Given.
Shay Given, unfortunately, is not tenable either. You've got 45 seconds and only 1 incorrect guess left.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it's not a bad return.
If you get, I can give you a clue.
Go on.
Say the 2 players left in joint 8th, both 132, are the same nationality.
What? Oh, that doesn't help me. What's my time?
You got 15 seconds left. They speak English.
Okay, I'm going to
their
say
first language.
It's got to be USA. I'm going to say Tim Howard.
He's got it.
What's the bold guy, left-footed? The other USA goalkeeper who played for Villa.
And your time is up, unfortunately.
Oh. Hang on, what's his name?
That was a good performance.
The bold left-footed goalkeeper who used to play for Aston Villa, isn't it?
It is.
I can't remember his name. I know his face.
His initials are BF.
Brad Friedel.
Brad Friedel.
It wasn't him I was thinking of.
Were you thinking of?
There's another one.
He was called Brad as well, wasn't he?
Brad Guzan.
Or was he called Brad Guzan? That's
Brad Friedel. Oh, I had to figure Friedel.
Yeah, Brad Friedel was also joint 8th on 132. Mark Schwarzer was one you said very early, but you didn't go for him. He is in 3rd place
with
152. And a player in 1, 2, 3, 4,
5th
in 6th position.
Where was David Seaman?
5th.
Oh, David. Okay, yeah.
Was a player. This was the hardest name on the board. I thought you could get 9, and then if you get this, that would be amazing. I've never even heard of him, to be honest. Whether that's my poor knowledge, he's played for Palace, Leeds, and Everton in sort of it was like 90s through to sort of early 2000s. He was English.
No.
Nigel Martin.
No, I have obviously never seen him play, but I have heard of him in other quizzes. The name rings a bell, but I would never have guessed him.
No, I would have thought maybe you've seen like lists like this before, and you think, oh, that's an interesting one. I'll throw that in. So, you got 7 on that, which was a decent performance. I think you could have got 9.
Yeah.
I think those names were floating in there, but
yeah, I just wasn't confident because I was trying to. I just wasn't confident.
That puts you up to 24, so it gives me a very slender lead on 25.
No, that was good. I really enjoyed that one. Much harder than the one I gave you. It's fine.
It was. You got it up the difficulty.
Yeah, I know, but he just missed a week, so I wasn't sure how, you might have been not feeling it,
I
But
was
it's
away studying all week. That's what it was.
study leave, yeah. His football knowledge was too poor, so he had to go away and research, do a bit of
Yeah.
homework.
After my 5, I had to go away and study
Yeah.
all the leagues.
Yes, but that's it. You take a very slender lead, like you said, but we should get back to the football, shouldn't we?
Yeah, let's get back into it.
Okay, with West Ham United 3, Nottingham Forest 2, and a goal-field affair at the London Stadium. Nottingham Forest, have not been great at keeping clean sheets this season, but West Ham have been great at scoring goals this season, and, it came to pass with a fantastic performance from David Moyes' side.
Yeah, they started really, really strong, and to be honest, they probably could have been 2, maybe 3 goals up in that first half, the way that they were playing. Really dominated, and I think once Awani got that goal, they really regretted not punishing Forest when they had the bulk of the possession, when they had the bulk of the chances, because they looked like the much, much better side. Paqueta got an early goal, really nice finish from himself, and they were just playing really well. Souček was sort of occupying that number 10 position with Ward-Prowse in behind and Alvarez alongside him, and they really dominated that midfield in the first half, and they should have taken advantage of it, and they will be kicking themselves because it was a pretty quick turnaround for Forest. Got one before the break from Awani, who had a really good start to the season. I think he had a few games out through injury. Has come back with a goal, and then Elanga on the 60th minute. You'd think it was the 95th minute, the way he took off his shirt and celebrated for some strange reason, made it 2-1, and Forest completely turned the game on its head. And fair play to them, because in that chunk of the game, they were the better side and completely flipped it from how it was earlier on in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Lang, I don't know what he's doing. I remember, I think Mo Salah took a shot off against Crystal Palace once in what was a 2-0 win. It's a very bizarre time to take a shot off, but, maybe it's just as fans looking on, they're just like, why would you take a shot off in any situation, which isn't like a final or something that means a lot? I don't know. He must have been very happy to score. He must have been under some pressure. Steve Cooper must have been giving him a bollocking or something at half time.
Yeah, it was really strange, because I would understand it maybe if he hadn't scored in a few games, or it was like he'd been like kicked all game or something. It was very, very strange. I feel like I wish I was a journalist to interview him afterwards to find out why.
Yeah, I think the funniest part was they took his shirt off and then he ripped off his sports bra as well, because he was like,
Yeah.
no, I want to be fully shirtless, nothing on top.
Yeah.
It was just really weird.
At least it didn't go any further than that.
Oh, God, yeah.
Could have been the wildest celebration.
Yeah, I remember seeing some players who've taken like shirt off, shorts off, shoes off, everything apart from just their underwear, but just giving it all to the fans after games. It's weird. Anyway.
Yeah, I remember. I was just going to say, I remember Bentner as well. He got a fine. I can't remember who it was. I think he was playing for Juventus at the time, for showing his boxers, because they were Paddy Power boxers, and they'd like sponsored him or something.
Yeah, and he was just like not allowed to show it. So I remember that, because I remember seeing clips like all game. He was just like pulling up his shirt and his shorts were a bit down, so you could see the sponsor on the band on the outside. Very weird. Yeah. Back to the football show. But yeah, it was a fantastic first goal by Paqueta. I think Dominguez was trying to play the ball, switch it from left to right, and trying to find the right back, but he ended up just hitting the West Ham players, and then Paqueta with a fantastic strike from outside the box and just kind of caresses it into the bottom corner past Lacademos. And then, like you said, Bowen with his 8th goal of the season. I didn't realise he scored that many goals. It's actually unattainable that I didn't quite get him, because of the fact that he just crept on me in the amount of goals he scored. But another one, and the set pieces with Nottingham Forest were really struggle with, which in one hand you can say, oh, you should be doing better at those, but on the other hand, when you got someone like James Ward-Prowse, which I had to check my notes, his 9th assist of the season already in the league, which is just an astounding number, and when it just seemed like such an obvious transfer in the summer, James Ward-Prowse to West Ham, but the fact that no club really wanted him initially, and the fact that West Ham did come in for him, it was just a match made in heaven, because Souček ends up being on the end of one of his crosses as well from a corner, and they get the win. And I think on the balance of play, just about deserved West Ham were the better side, but Nottingham Forest, I think they need to manage games a lot better, because they were 2-1 up in this game, and really, I don't know what to say. There's 2 set pieces. They could have been better. But I think they were just often, too many times, they were just giving the ball away too easily and just allowing West Ham to come onto them and, really handing West Ham, here's the lock, here's the key, and off you go, do your best, because they really kind of shot themselves in the foot, really, if anything.
Yeah, I think we've seen that quite a lot with Forest away this season. They have not looked as confident. They haven't defended as well, and they definitely haven't attacked and progressed as well. We only saw that for sort of the middle 20 minutes or so of the game where they really went for it. They've only got 13 points now, 4 points of which were away from home, and they're sitting in 15th. They're looking good at home, but really struggling away. And if they don't if they could have held on to this game and kept on, it pushed them up the league a little bit, get them away from that relegation zone. But they're sort of hovering there at the moment. They're a bit of a funny side because they've got some good players and they do pull out some good games. But then, like you've said, they're throwing this game away and losing 3 points, which would have been huge for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one where not just Nottingham Forest, but there's a couple of teams like we'll come on to, like the Fulham, Wolves, who are just a few points ahead of Bournemouth, who are on 9 points. But, a couple of wins for Bournemouth and a couple of losses for those teams, and they could find themselves, very close to that relegation, the 3 newly promoted teams in the relegation zone, who are saying, and that they need to maybe almost they need to not look at the 3 in the bottom in the relegation zone, but look at Bournemouth as the marker of, okay, we need to make sure we're just above Bournemouth, because they look like they're the side who defensively and offensively could be doing all right. But like you said, I think it's just Nottingham Forest at home, it's a different kettle of fish compared to when they're away. When they're away, they really seem to struggle, because if you talk about like game management, the game against Man United, they were 2-0 up so early on and just threw it away with 3 goals over the course of the game. But I think Nottingham Forest will be absolutely fine. I think West Ham, it is good to end their winless streak. I think it was 4 games in a row they hadn't won. And maybe, they were struggling a bit to try and balance Europe and the Premier League with a couple of injuries themselves. But, it's a good win to get the 3 points, and they take that into the international break.
Yeah, they're only 2 points behind Brighton and 3 points behind Newcastle now, sitting in 9th position. So a really good place for them. If we're looking at sort of their season so far, I think what the expectations were at the start of the season, they'll be really happy with that. And good to get a win, especially after maybe not playing so well in the last few games after a really, really good start right at the start of the season. So seem to have flipped that and slowly sort of getting back into the form that we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. And then moving on to a game which, in my opinion, going into the game week, had a 0-0 written all over it, but turned out to be a 5-goal fest. And, it's actually quite a great, entertaining game of football. Crystal Palace 2, Everton 3, and a fantastic win for Everton. Another win on the road for them. But I think more than anything, I think the mentality they showed to get back into the game, and they took the lead all 3 times. It's a great performance away from home.
Yeah, and it was quite a different Everton performance, maybe than what we've seen earlier in the season, and a performance where they did things well that they hadn't done well previously, and done some things badly that they had done well. I think it was almost completely swapped. We saw Everton be really clinical in this game. They only had around sort of 30-35% of possession. Palace dominated the ball, and Everton were really clinical. They really took their chances. They only had 4 shots on target and scored 3 of them. They broke really well when they needed to, and it was just a good clinical performance from Everton. On the other side, they didn't defend very well. I think Palace found it quite easy to play around them and get into some good positions. Everton sitting back and absorbing that pressure, but I think they may have let Palace do that a little bit too much, and in some ways they may have got lucky to get all 3 points, the way that Palace did dominate the ball. And the difference, I think, in this game was that Palace didn't take their chances and maybe didn't create enough high-quality chances, despite the fact they did have quite a high shot volume and, as a result, quite high XG.
Yeah, and that's pretty much sums up Crystal Palace in a nutshell, the fact that they have so many chances, but their goal conversion rate is so low because of the fact that they don't have, a 15-20 goal striker up front playing for them. Otton Edouard, got a goal in the end for them and did, and has been doing all right so far this season, but they really need someone of a bit higher quality, someone who can put the ball in the back of them a bit more consistently. But it did really help having Eberechi Eze back in the side, because he looked like such a creative threat in that side. And another thing to be positive for Crystal Palace fans is the fact that Michael Olise came off the bench in the second half of this game, come back from his injury his first time this season. and both of them together, Crystal Palace can keep both of them fit for a long period of time. They could really start getting some more goals and getting some more points. But I think it was Eze, who was a talisman for Crystal Palace in this game. The way he just picks up the ball and just drives into the box, he caused Branthwaite to have to make that challenge for the first goal, which was a penalty in the end. And and they could have arguably had another penalty, but the referee gave it as a dive. VAR did check it, didn't overturn it. It was a bit harsh, I think. I think it's one where if the referee gives it, the VAR aren't overturning it, but because it was given as a dive, I think maybe he shouldn't, maybe just carry on the game, but not a yellow card for Eze. I think it was really harsh because I do think Branthwaite does touch him. Do you agree?
It's a difficult one with those because it's not like a really clear dive that's trying to con the ref. I think it's just an exaggeration maybe of something that would be a foul. Like if somebody did that in their defensive third and there was a little clip like that and then they went down, we see it all the time and a free kick's just given. I suppose because it's a pen and he probably is definitely looking for a pen, looking for the contact, even if the contact wouldn't have been there. It's a difficult one. It feels like I don't know if they are able to give free kicks for dives but not yellow cards, or does it always have to be a yellow card?
Yeah, it's a yellow card for simulation, but if there is contact, but you just don't think, if the referee doesn't think it's enough to warrant a foul, I'm not quite sure. But I think
they just don't. They don't do anything, do they? They just carry on.
Yeah, they don't do anything.
It'd be interesting if they could just give free kick but not the yellow.
Yeah, because I do think just let the game. I don't know actually. What do you do? Probably just a drop ball then at that point. It's weird because I think VAR should look at that and just go, okay, it's not a dive, and the player doesn't deserve yellow, because what if he did get a second yellow? Then it would be like, well, VAR looked at it and just maybe it's a drop ball and just rescind the yellow card. Maybe a bit like with Endo for Liverpool, just go, okay, it's not a red, and we've had a look at it, but we had a look and we think it's a yellow. I don't know. Maybe they should, I don't know, help more, help less. I don't know. It's VAR. Yeah, anything goes really. But yeah, I thought, Mikalenko was great in this game for Everton. You got the first goal for them, his driving run into the box. He stayed in the box and, ended up getting a free header. He then, has the shot for the second goal, comes off the post and Doucouré gets the tap in. But then it's Everton who find a way to get all 3 points, regardless of if they deserve it or not. The story will tell. Everton won and were the winner from Idrissa Gana Gueye.
Yeah, he's been pushed out to the bench sort of the last few games, with Garner coming inside and sitting alongside Onana. And Everton, I think, have a lot of good options in the midfield. I think he probably wouldn't have been anyone's guess as who's going to come on and score a winner, being a very, very defensive midfielder normally. Took his chance well when he came on. And again, I've said it, I feel like I say it so many times in this podcast, that midfield of Doucouré, Onana, Garner and Gueye are just really, really good, and it feels like they're very well-rounded, all of them. They can all do a lot. We see Doucouré playing almost alongside the striker, despite the fact we know that we have seen him play in a defensive midfield position, almost as a 6. And they do have a lot of that interchange. Doucouré can sometimes drop. Garner pushes forward. Onana likes to drive forward down that sort of left side, alongside whether it's McNeil, get a lot of link up there. Just a really well-rounded midfield, and I think this game did suit them, playing on that transition, especially with Gueye being out and having Garner and Onana a little bit more mobile and can sort of carry Everton forward. And they did that really well and got a big 3 points, and I think it's starting as Everton are picking up more points, not just playing well. I think they're almost getting out of the question of being relegation contenders, and I think we're starting to see more shouts that they are going to be quite a comfortable mid-table team this season, which would be good because I'd really like them to stay up and build on what they're doing at the moment under Deitch. And still, I always say it, they're one of, for me, the most exciting teams to watch this season, because I think they just play really, really well, and they don't seem to play like a lot of other sides in the league at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is all what Everton fans wanted, just not to be in a relegation battle again, but just solid mid-table, bring in some young, exciting players, but also players who can make a difference in the final third, like they have with the likes of Beto, Harrison, McNeil now with a better team around him. They all look a lot better for having Sean Dyche and this style of play in the Everton squad implemented. So I think a mid-table finish would thrill Everton fans for the last few seasons and being relegation struggles and going down to the last game of the season. And it's one where in hindsight, almost looked like Sean Dyche was too obvious for Everton, but now it's like no, it was just the perfect fit for them, the perfect manager, the perfect team, and a solid season. And they go into the new stadium next season, and they can build on things more and more, and they can finally have a squad that excites. And I think that does at this moment in time. Shall we move on then to Aston Villa 3, Fulham 1? Fulham now, who are winless in the last 4, which is becoming a bit of an issue, but what do you expect when you go against an Aston Villa side who have now the 13th win at home in a row in the league? Unai Emery doing a fantastic job, and another victory by another 3 goals scored at home, and just another fantastic performance. What more can you say?
Yeah, Villa just looking unstoppable at home at the moment. Again, saying the same with Everton, really efficient, really clinical, and not just in their chances, but in their possession. They only had pretty much 50% possession in this game, shared the ball with Fulham. But the difference was what they did with it. And I think that's something that we know is going to happen under Emery. He's going to play it out from the back. He's going to play it quickly. He's going to play it around you. And he's going to score a lot of goals. And they've done that this season. A lot of that play and building it up really quickly from the back, we saw through John McGinn, who just best player on the pitch for this game for me. And not just in an attacking sense, that I think he has been really good in this season. We've seen him play on the left of midfield, on the right of midfield, as a 10. In this game, the shape was very different, I think, to what we've seen. It was almost like a 4-box-2 with... I wouldn't even say that. It was their 2 centre-backs sitting pretty deep. Then you almost had a box and the wide players, and then the 2 up front as well. Quite a strange setup, and definitely not what I would have predicted with T. Elements coming into the side and playing alongside McGinn in those sort of 2 advanced positions in their box midfield. He was really good defensively, McGinn, and defensively high up the pitch, and I think that's where that mattered a lot and why Aston Villa were able to make a lot of chances with little possession. 15 out of 22 ground duels, which is just absolutely insane, as well as an interception and a tackle. Kept that ball really nice and high for Aston Villa and enabled them to get those chances when they had it. And the fullbacks were the ones providing the width in this game. We didn't sort of see Bailey or Diaby creating that space out wide. It was Digne and Cash who were able to get up really nice, high and wide, and it just gave Aston Villa so many options as well as control in the midfield.
Yeah, I agree, and I agree that John McGinn was man of the match, but I think that Tielemans, who came into the side, also had a fantastic performance. And like you said, it was very weird. I remember watching the game and trying to figure out the heat maps, and all the material were just everywhere, and you couldn't figure out which of the 4 midfielders were in what position technically. But I think there were times in that first half where Tielemans was down that left channel. I won't say he played on the left because I'm not really sure, but down the left channel, and it was Alex Iwobi who was tasked with marking him. But then every time Tielemans was making that run from midfield, past the back line, and getting the ball into space from a long ball by Digne. And every time Tielemans just looked like he was going to get there first. He looked fitter, he looked faster, and he was pressing really well as well. And it's not something you necessarily associate with his game, but I think that's why it's taken him so long to get into this Aston Villa side under Unai Emery, because that's what he wants from his midfielders. And to see that from him, I think it's just fantastic, because he's come out and said he's been struggling to adapt to the way that Unai Emery wants to play, and it's taken him a bit of time. But we all know from his time at Leicester he's a fantastic player. So that's just another midfielder who looks really promising, just another player in general, and another player who could take Aston Villa to the next level potentially. And they're 5th in the league; they're not too far away from Manchester City. They don't necessarily have a chance to win the league, but they could cause an upset and get in the top 4 places, absolutely. Because we say it week in, week out, no one's got as many points as Unai Emery and the Aston Villa side, apart from Man City and Arsenal, since he's come to the league. So another fantastic performance, but a player who did not have a fantastic performance was Anthony Robertson. I think it's a bit of a shame he got the own goal for the first one. He then did get he did let go of possession very cheaply for the second goal, in which John McGinn and Leon Bailey counter-attacked really well, set it up for Ollie Watkins, and then they ended up making it 3. And Fulham, not a great deal at the offense.
No, they had a sort of funny setup. I think it was strange having Iwobi alongside Paulinho almost in like a double pivot. I really don't think it worked at all. We saw Iwobi sort of drifting out wide, drifting forward a lot, where his best position is probably as either one of the eights in a three or in your sort of conventional right and left midfield. But it was good to see him back in the side, sort of playing a bit more football. It just didn't really work for Fulham. They weren't really able to get many high-quality chances, restricted to a lot of long-range efforts, and defensively didn't really stand much of a match against Watkins and Diaby, as you said, especially Anthony Robinson, who did have a game to forget, I think. Fulham, they're slowly, like Forest, sort of slowly moving down there, not picking up a lot of points, potentially getting sucked into a relegation battle, despite the fact their squad is decent, got some decent players, and they can put up performance, but not a good one for this side this weekend.
No, it's not at all. And to be fair, I think I actually quite disagree about their squad being decent, because I think they've got a lot of Premier League names in there. But if you put them together, I think they would struggle. In isolation, in a better team, they might be alright. But I think if you take out Paulinho and you take out Bernd Leno, I think that's a side, ready to go down. I really do. And, they might lose Paulinho in January with Bayern Munich if they want to, pursue their interest again for another window in a row. And to be fair, I just think, Marco Silva extended his contract to 2026. Just give the man a striker. He needs a striker. He needs someone who can just put the ball in the back of the net. That's what he needs more than anything else. It's obvious that Carlos Vinicius isn't doing it. It's clear that Raul Jimenez isn't doing it, even though, fair play to him, because after a long, barren goal drought, Raul Jimenez did eventually get the ball in the back of the net to make it 3-1, but it was too little too late.
Yeah, I think everyone was happy to see Jimenez score, because I think we know the player he was before the injury, and unfortunately it has just almost completely just written him off as a player and as one of sort of the top strikers in the league. He was at one point, but good to see him get the goal, a consolation, even if just that for Fulham. But yeah, I suppose when you say it like that, and if they do take out Paulinho, he is their most important player by far, and goes to Bayern Munich, which says enough about his quality and potentially maybe how much he stands out in that Fulham side, and there could be trouble for them. Yeah,
potentially. But we should move on then to Brighton and Hove Albion 1, Sheffield United 1. And another point for Sheffield United, on the back of a win against a Brighton side who are now winless in the last 5 games. Bit of a worry for Brighton to see if they're actually see that they're struggling with the Europe Premier League fixture congestion. But they were dominating the game for the whole of the first half up until that red card, weren't they?
Yeah, they were the better side in the first half, but they just weren't able to take advantage of that, really. Didn't create any amazing chances, but a few good ones that they probably should have done better in. Adingra scored a lovely goal, took it past 2-3 players, 1-2 with Benanonte, and a really nice finish. It was a lovely goal. It's same. They've had a few games like this season, Brighton, where they're just not creating chances, whether they're looking slow or they're just struggling in their build-up. And I think in this case, it was the players they played and the way that they set up. They looked really narrow, and there were a lot of players occupying very similar positions. Looking at Fati, Adingra, and Lallana were all really, really narrow, and there was no exploitation of the wide positions for Brighton. I think in this game they really missed Matoma, Estupinian, March, those players. Well, Matoma was on the bench and did eventually come on, but all players who didn't have any minutes or very limited in this game, and those players are the ones we know love to get forward in those wide positions and punish sides. And even with Gross playing as a right back, he was inverting. There was almost no width for Brighton, and it meant they weren't able to take advantage of the possession that they had in that first half. They did dominate, and then Dahoud, red card, and the game completely flipped. Brighton completely sat back, and Sheffield United went, right, this is it, we can get something here. And they went and they got it.
Yeah, and like you said, if you dominate for the whole game of football for a long period of time, but you don't put a team away, then eventually they're going to have a chance and you're going to regret it. And they did, like I said, with Dahoud, who I think can have absolutely no complaints. I don't think, obviously, he didn't mean it. He looked like, oh my God, what's happening? He looked distraught. But at the end of the day, I think the challenge was on the back of the knee and then ended up dragging his foot down the leg, and I thought it was dangerous. It could have injured the player, the Sheffield United player, and he was rightly sent off. And on top of another team who have a lot of players out injured, losing Mohamed Dahoud as well for the next 3 games is not going to be good for them. Roberto De Zerbi is going to find a way to cope with him. I'm sure he will. But like we said, a team who haven't won the last 5, it is going to cause some trouble, especially when they then go and concede. And I think the manner and the way they concede as well, because when the ball gets played into the midfield for Sheffield United, and then you see Matoma and Bogle, and the fact that Matoma can see Bogle but just isn't unable to make the run back and keep up with him, and then the fact that there's a Webster own goal. If he didn't tap it into his own net, Archer would have been there to do it for him. And Sheffield United, managed to somehow stay in the game, get a point, and they could have maybe gone for it and then got a second, but I think after that Brighton actually did get the foot on the ball and did try and create the better chances towards the back end of the game. But it looked at the end of it, both teams were kind of happy with a draw and they would take it and move on, because Sheffield United need the points, and Brighton just don't want to lose the game after not winning for the last 5. But now Sheffield United off the rock bottom of the table. Burnley move to 20th with 4 points. Sheffield United move up one into 19 with 5 points, but they are slowly getting better.
Yeah, it was a good game plan from Sheffield United. I think that would have been their plan from the off, whether the red card happened or not. Try and prevent Brighton from scoring in the first sort of hour, and then move and try and attack late on in the game to snatch something. And they did that well. It was a good game plan. It paid off. They got a point away at Brighton. It was a good point for them, but definitely an opportunity missed for Brighton. A game they probably should have won in terms of the quality between the two sides. Most sides sort of are thinking Sheffield United at home is going to be an easy win, and it's more points dropped from Brighton. Like you said, they haven't won in 5 games now. They could be up there with Aston Villa in a similar points total if they were able to get the points in these games, but they're missing out. I'm not sure where Brighton what Brighton need to change to sort of start getting more wins and more comfortable wins. I'm not too sure. I know they've got a lot of players out and a lot of injuries at the moment. That could be a big part of it. But yeah, just not too sure, really. Not too sure. It was a funny game, a point each.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe with some players back, they'll be able to find some form again. And then moving on to the last game of the game week. Not very often you see Man United last, but it is. Man United 1, Luton Town 0. And I'll be honest, it was a very boring game of football. I think in all honesty, I think Man United were trying to knock down on Luton's door. Luton were just kept on saying nope. And that was the game up until the goal. And to be fair, a bit of fortune with the goal as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, Lindelof got it in the end. Took them 60 minutes. But overall, it was fairly comfortable for United. It was just one of those games, a bit of not much of a contest really. Luton had a few little chances, but I think if United would have scored earlier, it could have been sort of 2-3-0, and they would have just kept possession. Not really too much to sort of say on this game. We saw Rashford playing on the right. Is I suppose a little bit of interest to take away, if anything. We've got Garnacho on the left, which definitely Garnacho is much more suited to the left. Rashford seems fairly comfortable on either side. He can play well on both. Mount came on and had a decent game, replacing Eriksen. Still, potentially, I think a few worries in that midfield area for if United are playing a better side, a more progressive and a more adventurous side. I think any combination of Eriksen, McTominay, Mount and Amrabat, I think a few midfielders will be able to work their way around that fairly easily and attack United, especially with the back line that they're having to play at the moment is weakened by their injuries. But with it being Luton, a side who are always going to sit back, they weren't exploited. Comfortable game, comfortable possession, and 3 points for United.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rob Edwards came out at the end of the game and said that, we're doing really well. We're keeping ourselves in games. We're giving ourselves a fighting chance. But at this moment in time, we're not getting the points we need. And he said he's happy with the points he's got at the moment. But he said the Luton need more because that's what they need to stay in the league. And he was very open and honest about that, which I think is refreshing. it'd be interesting to see what they do after the international break. I think it might just be more of a case of just keep going again, and maybe the fixtures will go their way. Just a few results here and there will help. But I think it's not too much to worry about because I think Luton already are doing much better than we thought they were going to do. So credit to them. I do think it's interesting now that Man United are actually, over the last 5 fixtures, have got the most points. The form team in the league, which is very interesting considering the talk around Erik ten Hag. I think the pressure, rightly so, because of the fact that it's Man United and they should be expecting better from them. But I think the call for him to be sacked, I think, a bit outlandish. And I think a bit of the media want a manager to be sacked for something to talk about because there's not necessarily something to talk about in between the October and November internationals. But I think, just another win. It'd be nice for United fans to maybe reassure them if, they had a convincing win, it was a few more goals. But, 3 points and then not too far away from the Champions League spots.
Yeah, they're in 6th place with a negative goal difference, which is, it says how they're picking up points in maybe games where they're not playing well, and then when they're losing, when they're not playing well, they are losing quite heavily, which is maybe where sort of those shouts of Ten Hag being sacked is the way they are losing is quite embarrassing, I suppose, and they're not really getting enough goals. Haaland has the same amount of goals as Man United this season on 13. So there are still some struggles, and I don't think the points particularly hide that and maybe aren't sustainable at the moment. But it's good for all the players' confidence, and I think that's definitely something that's lacking. And I think it is a lot of it maybe is the way the players are playing at the moment, not necessarily the way they are setting up. But a win like this can only do them good. I'm sure they can build on that and start to play better, especially as players start to return from injury as well, will only help.
Yeah, and I think as a rival fan, the fact that they've been playing so badly and still getting results, I fear that more because if it does click and click in a good way, like we saw towards the back end of last season, if players who are injured come back, if the back line, can get some of those players fit because they've had so many injuries, then there could be a worry. And I think that's more worry. I think Man United are more worrying than Chelsea in the fact that Man United can play bad and get the wins, but Chelsea can play well and not get the wins. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. That's a funny one, like you say, because if United start playing well and getting the wins, that's the combination that every team wants. And the fact that they haven't get that but still gotten the wins is, it's worrying. And I suppose a few teams might be looking over their shoulders in the weeks to come.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I think that's it for this week's episode of the Football Fellowship podcast. We hope you've enjoyed. If you're listening to us on Spotify, please give us 5 stars. And if you're listening to it on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe. Anything else to say, Tobes?
No, just besides, I suppose next week there'll be no Premier League games to review with it being an international break. I am sure we will have an episode ready, whether that's a fun, cool tier list or something like that, or the very, very, very slim chance that Mev will convince me to talk about international football outside of a major tournament, potentially. But we'll see. But we'll definitely have an episode, and hopefully we will see you there.
Yeah, we will. Take care.
Cheers.